The sky over Aldebaran Prime turned blood red as the sun set behind the mountains. Commander Susan Miller watched from the window of the emergency bunker. 6 days ago, this view had shown a thriving city of 3 million people. Now, only smoking. Ruins remained. The Vraks had made sure of that. Susan rubbed her tired eyes and turned back to the crowded room. 300 survivors huddled together on the floor. Some slept. Others stared blankly at nothing. A few children whimpered quietly, but most had stopped crying days ago. That worried her more than their tears had. "Status report," Susan said, to Lieutenant Peter Wright as he approached. His uniform was torn and stained with blood that wasn't his own. "Not good," Peter whispered, keeping his voice low so the civilians couldn't hear. "We lost contact with the eastern bunker 2 hours ago. That makes 4 gone silent in the last day." Susan felt her stomach tighten. "The Vraks are hunting methodically. They won't stop until they find us all." She walked with Peter to the makeshift command center in the corner of the bunker. A cracked display screen showed their final defensive positions. Red dots marked confirmed Vraks patrols. There were more red dots than yesterday. "Any word from Central Command?" Susan asked, though she already knew the answer. Peter shook his head. "Nothing since they abandoned the capital. The Alliance fleet pulled out of the entire Sector 3 days ago." "Abandoned us, you mean?" Susan said. She kept the bitterness from her voice, but not from her heart. The Galactic Alliance had promised protection to all its member worlds. That promise had vanished when the Vraks arrived. A young communications officer named Ryan Ellis approached them. His face was pale. "Commander, we've received an automated message. New Hope Colony has fallen. That's the 17th world in 6 months." Susan closed her eyes for a moment. New Hope had been home to 60 million people. She pushed the thought away. She couldn't save them, but maybe she could still save the people in this room. "What about our weapons?" she asked. "Useless," Peter said. "The Vraks adapted to our laser rifles after the first day. Their exoskeletons now reflect the beams back at our soldiers. We've tried everything in our arsenal." Susan walked to a small table where the last remaining scientists on Aldebaran Prime huddled over data tablets. Dr. Laura Bridges looked up as Susan approached. The scientist's eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Please tell me you found something," Susan said. "Anything." Laura shook her head. "Their biology is unlike anything we've seen. They learn and adapt faster than we can develop new weapons, and they're connected somehow. When one Vraks learns something, they all learn it." "Like a hive mind?" Susan asked. "Similar but more complex," Laura explained. "They're individuals, but their knowledge is shared instantly across their entire species. It's why they've been unstoppable. By the time we understand one weakness, they've already fixed it." A loud boom shook the bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling. The civilians began to panic. "They're getting closer," Peter said. That blast was directly above Sector 7. Susan knew they were running out of time. The Vraks didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. Every world they conquered was stripped of all resources, including organic life. She made her decision. "Get everyone to the emergency tunnels. We'll head deeper underground toward the old mining network." As Peter organized the evacuation, Susan turned to Ryan. "I need to send one last message." Ryan looked confused. "To whom?" "The Alliance isn't listening anymore." "Not to the Alliance," Susan said. "To Earth." Ryan's eyes widened. "Earth? But they've been isolated for a century. The Treaty of Proxima forbids them from—" "The treaty also promised Alliance protection," Susan cut him off. "Look where that got us." She pushed Ryan aside and began typing coordinates into the communication system. Herself. Most Alliance citizens thought Earth was just a myth, a story told to children. A primitive world of violent humans who couldn't be trusted with advanced technology. The Alliance had contained them, restricted them to their home system with diplomatic pressure and threats. But Susan knew better. Her grandmother had been born on Earth before the treaty. She had told Susan stories of humanity's home, and of their military might that had frightened the Alliance so badly they enacted the treaty in the first place. "The frequency is ancient," Ryan said, watching her work. They probably don't even monitor it anymore. They'll be listening, Susan said with certainty. Humans never trusted the Alliance. They'll have kept their old systems active. She finished the message. It was short, containing the coordinates of Aldebaran Prime and a simple plea. All hope is lost. The Alliance has fallen. Help us. Susan pressed the send button. The system showed the message had transmitted, though there was no way to know if anyone would receive it. Another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. The lights flickered. They won't come, Peter said, returning from organizing the civilians. Even if they get the message, why would they help us? The Alliance has isolated them for 100 years. Susan grabbed her emergency pack and checked her useless weapon one last time. Because humans are different. My grandmother told me stories. The Alliance feared them because they never stopped preparing for war, even in peacetime. Sounds barbaric, Peter muttered. Maybe, Susan agreed. But right now we need barbarians. They led the survivors through a hidden door and into the emergency tunnels. The narrow passage would take them deep beneath the planet's surface where the Vraks might not follow. They had food for 2 weeks. After that, Susan didn't complete the thought. Instead, she watched as the last civilian entered the tunnel. She took one final look at the bunker before sealing the door behind them. The group moved slowly through the darkness. The children were quiet now, sensing the danger. Every few minutes they felt vibrations as the Vraks bombed the surface above them. Hours later they reached a larger cavern where they could rest. Susan checked her portable scanner. No Vrak signals yet. As the survivors settled in to sleep, Peter approached her again. What do we do if Earth doesn't respond? Susan looked at the tired faces around her. The last free citizens of Aldebaran Prime. Perhaps the last free citizens of the entire sector. We survive as long as we can, she said. And we hope. Peter nodded and walked away. Susan sat alone in the dim light of the emergency lanterns. She thought of Earth, a world she had never seen, a world of warriors who had never been tested against an enemy like the Vraks. They'll come, she whispered to herself. They have to. Above them, the Vraks continued their systematic destruction of everything human on Aldebaran Prime. They would find the survivors eventually. Susan knew this. Everyone knew this. Unless help arrived, all hope truly was lost. Admiral John Carter stood before the large window in his office on Luna Base, Earth's primary military headquarters. From here he could see both the blue marble of humanity's homeworld and the vast darkness of space beyond. A space humanity had been forbidden to explore for a century. The message had arrived 6 hours ago. A desperate plea from a world called Aldebaran Prime. John had never been there. No human had since the Treaty of Proxima, but he knew exactly where it was. Earth's military never stopped watching the stars, never stopped preparing, even when they were confined to their home system. His office door slid open. General Eric Howard entered, followed by Counselor Kate Martinez. Both wore the serious expressions of people who knew what was coming. Is it authenticated? Kate asked without greeting. John nodded. Our deep space monitoring stations confirmed. The signal originated from Aldebaran Prime, and our long-range probes show Vrak ships in orbit around the planet. Eric's face darkened. Then it's happening, just as we predicted. The Vraks have broken through Alliance defenses. What defenses? John said with a bitter laugh. The Alliance dismantled most of their military 50 years ago. They thought their diplomatic corps and cultural exchange programs would protect them. Kate moved to the large display table in the center of the room. With a wave of her hand, she brought up a holographic map of known space. Blue dots represented Alliance worlds. Red dots showed confirmed Vraks activity. There were far too many red dots. 17 worlds in 6 months, she said quietly. The Alliance is collapsing. John touched the display, zooming in on Aldebaran Prime. They've always underestimated the Vraks. We tried to warn them when the first colonies were attacked. And they accused us of warmongering, Eric added. said we were looking for an excuse to break the treaty and expand beyond Sol. The three stood in silence, watching the simulation of Vrax's movements through Alliance space. Earth's advanced AI systems projected the invasion patterns, showing the systematic nature of the Vrax conquest. Nothing random, nothing wasteful. Perfect military efficiency. "The treaty is clear," Kate finally said. "We cannot intervene in Alliance affairs. We cannot deploy military forces beyond our system." "The treaty is already broken," John replied, firmly. "The Alliance promised protection to all worlds, including ours, in exchange for our containment. They've failed to provide that protection." Eric nodded in agreement. "The Vrax won't stop with Alliance worlds. Every simulation we've run shows they'll eventually reach Sol. Better to fight them now, on Alliance territory, than wait for them here." Kate wasn't easily convinced. As head of the United Earth Defense Council, she represented the civilian leadership. "If we deploy the fleet, there's no going back. We'll be revealing capabilities we've kept hidden for a century. It's time," John said simply. The door opened again. A young officer named Ben Collins entered, his face flushed with excitement. "Admiral, the full Defense Council is assembled in the main chamber. They're ready for your briefing." 20 minutes. Later, John stood before the 12 members of the council. The large chamber, carved from lunar rock a century ago, had rarely been used for its intended purpose, authorizing military action beyond Sol. "Ladies and gentlemen," John began, "for 100 years, we have honored the Treaty of Proxima. We have contained our military to this system while continuing to advance our technology and train our forces. The Alliance called this paranoia. We called it prudence." The massive screen behind him showed real-time images from Earth's secret network of probes. The destruction of Aldebaran Prime was clearly visible. Once beautiful cities lay in ruins. Vrax ships patrolled the skies. "The message we received was brief," John continued. "All hope is lost. The Alliance has fallen. Help us." These words come from survivors on a dying world. One of many the Vrax have conquered while the Alliance did nothing. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some council members appeared shocked by the images. Others had the grim look of people who had expected this day. "Our intelligence suggests there may be thousands of survivors hiding underground on Aldebaran Prime. But they won't last long. The Vrax are methodical. They'll find them." Kate spoke up from her seat. "Admiral, what exactly are you proposing?" John didn't hesitate. "I propose immediate deployment of the First Fleet with support from the Steel Brigade. A full battle group, with ground forces ready for combat operations." The chamber erupted in voices. The First Fleet was Earth's most advanced naval force, with ships that had never seen actual combat. The Steel Brigade was humanity's elite fighting force. Soldiers, enhanced with technology the Alliance had forbidden centuries ago. "This would be a direct violation of the treaty," one counselor objected. "A treaty already violated by the Alliance's failure to maintain peace," Eric countered from his position beside John. "We always knew this day would come. That's why we built the fleet in the first place." John pulled up more images on the display. These showed Vrax biology and combat tactics gathered from years of secret observation. The Vrax are unlike any enemy the Alliance has faced. They share knowledge instantly across their entire species. When one Vrax learns to counter a weapon, they all do. The Alliance's defensive approach was doomed from the start. He highlighted the unique aspects of Vrax physiology. "But we've been studying them for decades. We know their weaknesses. Our weapons and tactics were designed specifically to counter their advantages." Another counselor, an older woman, leaned forward. "If we do this, we reveal ourselves fully. The Alliance may see us as an enemy once the Vrax are defeated." "If the Vrax are defeated," someone corrected. John looked each council member in the eye. "The Alliance feared us because we never stopped being warriors. Now those warriors are exactly what they need, what the entire galaxy needs." The debate continued for another hour. Arguments for caution, arguments for action. Throughout it all, the images of Aldebaran Prime remained on the screen. a constant reminder of what was at stake. Finally, Kate called for a vote. The result was unanimous. The First Fleet would deploy immediately. John left the chamber with Eric beside him. They walked quickly toward the military command center buried deep within the lunar base. "How soon can we be ready?" Eric asked. "Ships are already preparing for departure," John replied. "The Steel Brigade has been on standby alert since the message arrived." They entered the command center, a vast room filled with officers at monitoring stations. A massive display showed Earth's military forces, ships in orbit, ground troops. At lunar bases, weapons platforms throughout the system. John looked at the officers watching him. These men and women had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their parents and grandparents had done the same. Generation after generation of warriors with no war to fight. Until now. "Send the order," John said. "Authorization code. Wrath of Terra." The command center burst into activity. Officers relayed orders. Within minutes, the mighty ships of the First Fleet began moving away from their docking stations. John watched the display as hundreds of vessels formed up. The Alliance had always feared what humanity might become if left unchecked. They were about to find out if that fear was justified. The fleet would reach Aldebaran Prime in 3 days. John wondered if there would be anyone left to save by then. "They called us warmongers," Eric said quietly beside him. "Let's show them what real warriors can do." Susan Miller led her group through another dark tunnel. They had been moving underground for 5 days now. Food was running low. Water was even lower. The children no longer complained about being hungry. They were too weak. "How much farther?" Peter asked, helping an elderly man who had fallen behind. "The old mining chamber should be just ahead," Susan replied. "It has access to underground water. We can rest there." They had lost 12 people in the last 2 days, some from injuries, others from simply giving up. Susan forced herself to keep moving. She had to be strong for the others. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a vast chamber. Ancient mining equipment sat abandoned in the corners. A pool of clear water filled the center of the room. "Check the water," Susan ordered. 2 of her remaining officers tested it for poison or contamination. After a minute, they nodded. It was safe. The survivors rushed forward. Some drank directly from the pool. Others filled empty containers. For the first time in days, Susan saw something close to hope in their eyes. "Commander," Ryan called from where he had set up their communication equipment. "I'm picking up something strange." Susan joined him, frowning at the display. "Vrax?" "No," Ryan said, his voice trembling with excitement. "It's not Vrax communication patterns, it's not Alliance either. It's something else." Susan leaned closer. The signal was strong and clear, using an old military frequency. She pressed a button to receive the transmission. A calm, authoritative voice filled the chamber. "Alliance survivors, this is Captain Alan Ross of the UES Valiant. Hold position. Assistance incoming." The survivors fell silent. Even the children stopped what they were doing. "UES?" Peter whispered. "United Earthship?" Susan felt a rush of emotion she hadn't expected. "They came," she said softly. Earth answered. Ryan adjusted the equipment. "Should I respond?" Susan nodded. "Tell them our position and our numbers." As Ryan sent their coordinates, the ground above them trembled. At first, Susan thought the Vrax had found them. Then she realized the vibrations were different. Heavier. More rhythmic. "That's not Vrax artillery," Peter said, looking up at the stone ceiling. Susan felt a sudden urge to see what was happening. "I need to go to the surface." "That's suicide," Peter argued. "I'll take a small group through the emergency exit," Susan decided. "Just to observe. We need to know what's happening up there." 10 minutes later, Susan led Peter and 2 other officers up a narrow passage. It ended at an old maintenance hatch that opened onto a hillside overlooking what had once been the capital city. Susan carefully pushed the hatch open. The night air felt cool on her face after days underground. She crawled out and took cover behind a large rock. What she saw made her gasp. The sky was filled with ships unlike any Alliance vessel she had ever seen. Black, sleek designs with no visible engine glow. They moved silently, positioning themselves in precise formation above the Vrak's strongholds. "Earth ships," Peter whispered beside her. "They don't even look like they were built by the same species as Alliance vessels." He was right. Alliance ships were elegant, designed to showcase their advanced civilization. These human vessels were clearly built for one purpose only: war. The first strike came without warning. No demands for surrender, no attempt at communication. Just sudden, devastating firepower directed with surgical precision at Vrak's command structures. The Vraks responded with swarms of fighter craft. Their tactics had overwhelmed Alliance defenses on 17 worlds. But the Earthships seemed to anticipate every move, countering with defensive systems that made them nearly untouchable. "They've studied the Vraks," Susan realized. "They know how they fight." From the largest Earthship, small craft began to descend toward the surface. Not escape pods or civilian transports, but military dropships. The vessels landed at strategic points around the city. Hatches opened, and Susan saw her first Earth soldiers. They were nothing like Alliance peacekeepers. These warriors moved with mechanical precision, wearing powered armor that made them tower over both the Vraks and what would have been normal human height. Their weapons were unlike anything Susan had seen before. "What are they?" Peter asked, staring in awe. "The Steel Brigade," Susan answered, remembering stories her grandmother had told. "Earth's elite soldiers." The human warriors engaged the Vraks directly. Susan expected to see the same adaptation that had made Alliance weapons useless within hours. But something was different. The Earth weapons continued to cut through Vrak's armor no matter how many fell. "They're using different frequencies for each squad," Susan realized, watching the battle unfold. The Vraks adapt to one weapon, but by then they face something completely different. A group of Earth soldiers turned toward the hillside where Susan and her team were hiding. They approached with weapons ready. "We should run," Peter said urgently. Susan stood up instead, revealing herself. "No, they're here to help us." The Earth soldiers surrounded them quickly. Their leader stepped, forward armor hissing as the faceplate retracted. A woman with short brown hair and intense eyes studied them. "Alliance military?" she asked, noticing Susan's tattered uniform. "Commander Susan Miller, Aldebaran Defense Force." The woman nodded. "Sergeant Lisa Reeves, Steel Brigade 2nd Battalion. Are there more survivors?" "About 300 in a chamber below us," Susan answered. "Mostly civilians. We've been hiding for days." Lisa turned to her squad. "Secure this area. Call in medical support for the civilians." She looked back at Susan. "We'll get your people to safety." "How did you find us?" Peter asked. "How did you know where to look?" "We've been watching the Vrak since they first appeared at the Rim Worlds," Lisa explained, "monitoring their tactics, their communication. When we received your distress call, we already had plans in place." Susan noticed that none of the Earth soldiers seemed surprised or disturbed by the brutal efficiency of their attack. This wasn't their first combat, she realized. Though officially restricted to their home system, they had clearly been preparing for war. "Why help us?" Susan had to ask. After how the Alliance treated Earth, Lisa's expression didn't change. "We're soldiers. This is what we were made for." A massive explosion lit up the night sky as another Vrak's command center was destroyed by precision orbital fire. "The Vraks have conquered 17 worlds," Susan said. "Alliance forces couldn't stop them." "We're not Alliance forces," Lisa replied simply. Within hours, the survivors were brought to the surface. Earth medics treated the injured. Children were given food and clean clothes. For the first time in weeks, Susan heard laughter. From the hill, she watched as Earthships systematically destroyed every Vrak structure on the planet. Captain Alan Ross joined her, his uniform crisp and formal, so different from the practical combat gear of his soldiers. "You've saved us," Susan said. "But what happens now?" Alan looked at the stars above them. "Now we take the fight to the Vraks. Aldebaran Prime is just the beginning." The Alliance Council won't approve, Susan warned. They've always feared Earth's military power. Alan's smile was cold. The Alliance Council isn't in a position to approve or disapprove of anything anymore. A new order is coming, Commander Miller. Earth is back among the stars. Susan realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. The human soldiers had saved Aldebaran Prime, but they hadn't come just to defend one world. They had come to fight a war. 1 week had passed since the Earth forces arrived on Aldebaran Prime. Susan sat in a meeting room aboard the UES Valiant, Earth's flagship. The ship was unlike anything in the Alliance fleet. No luxury accommodations or diplomatic chambers. Every inch of space served a military purpose. Captain Alan Ross entered, followed by Sergeant Lisa Reeves and a tall man Susan hadn't met before. "Commander Miller, this is Colonel Frank Winters," Alan said. "He commands the Steel Brigade ground forces." Susan nodded in greeting. The colonel's face was hard, with a long scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He didn't smile or offer pleasantries. "We're moving to the next phase," Alan explained, activating the display table. A holographic map appeared, showing nearby star systems. "The Vraks have been driven from Aldebaran, but they still control 16 other worlds." Susan studied the map. Red markers showed Vraks-occupied planets. Blue showed Alliance worlds not yet conquered. Green indicated Earth fleet positions. "There are 6 more Earth battle groups entering Alliance space," Alan continued, "each targeting a different Vrak stronghold." "How is that possible?" Susan asked. "Earth has been confined to Sol for a century. How did you build such a large fleet in secret?" Frank spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "We never stopped building, never stopped training. The Alliance thought the treaty would make us soft. It just made us more determined." Lisa brought up images of Earth soldiers engaging Vraks forces on the surface of Aldebaran Prime. The footage showed tactics Susan had never seen before. The humans didn't fight like Alliance peacekeepers, they moved like predators. "Your grandmother was from Earth, right?" Lisa asked Susan. Susan nodded. "She left before the treaty was signed. She used to tell me stories, but I thought she was exaggerating. She said Earth never trusted the Alliance." "Smart woman," Frank commented. "The Alliance preached peace while leaving themselves vulnerable. We knew that would lead to disaster eventually." Alan changed the display to show Vraks biology. "Our scientists have been studying them for decades. We know how they communicate, how they adapt, how they think." Susan leaned forward, fascinated. "Alliance scientists couldn't figure out how to defeat their adaptive armor. Your weapons still work after multiple engagements." "Because we don't use the same approach twice," Lisa explained. "Different frequencies, different ammunition types, different attack patterns. By the time they adapt to one, we've already switched to another." Alan brought up another image. This one showed a Vraks command node that had been captured intact. "This is their weakness. The Vraks share information through these nodes. Destroy them, and their units become isolated." "Alliance tactics focused on defending population centers," Frank added with clear disapproval. "We target their command structure first. Cut off the head, the body dies." Susan felt a chill. The Alliance had always emphasized minimizing casualties even among enemy forces. These Earth soldiers had no such concerns. They fought to win, no matter the cost. A communications officer interrupted them. "Captain, Admiral Carter is ready for your report." The main screen activated, showing Admiral John Carter on the bridge of another Earth vessel. His eyes narrowed when he noticed Susan. "An Alliance officer in our strategic meeting, Captain Ross?" Alan stood straighter. "Commander, Miller has provided valuable intelligence on local conditions, Admiral. She fought the Vraks longer than anyone else on this planet." John studied Susan for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. What's the status of Aldebaran Prime?" "Secured, sir," Alan reported. "All Vraks forces eliminated. We've rescued approximately 3,000 survivors. Most local infrastructure is destroyed, but we've established basic services." "And the Alliance response?" Alan hesitated. "Still nothing official. Their communication network is in chaos. They seem unable to coordinate any meaningful response to our presence." John wasn't surprised. "As expected. What about the Vraks?" Lisa stepped forward. They're adapting their tactics, Admiral. The second wave of attacks on Proxima 4 showed they're learning from their defeats here. They're dispersing their command nodes, making them harder to target. Then we adapt faster, John said firmly. The key advantage humans have always had is our ability to change our approach more quickly than our enemies. Frank nodded in agreement. The Steel Brigade is ready to deploy to the next target system. Susan listened with growing concern. You're talking about full-scale war across multiple systems. The Alliance Council will see this as an invasion, not just a rescue mission. All eyes turned to her. John's expression was cold. The Alliance Council abandoned Aldebaran Prime and 16 other worlds to the Vrax, he said. They lost any moral authority when they failed to protect their citizens. Susan couldn't argue with that. She had seen firsthand how the Alliance had pulled back their forces, sacrificing outer colonies to buy time for the core worlds. What will happen when the Vrax are defeated? She asked instead. A new arrangement, Alan replied. One based on reality, not wishful thinking. The meeting continued with detailed planning for the next phase of operations. Susan was struck by the precision of Earth's strategy. Every move was calculated, every resource allocated efficiently. This wasn't a hastily assembled rescue mission. This was a war machine that had been preparing for decades. After the meeting, Lisa walked with Susan through the ship's corridors. Crew members moved with purpose, maintaining the strict discipline Susan had observed throughout her time with the Earth forces. Your people don't seem surprised by any of this, Susan noted. Fighting an alien species operating in foreign star systems, it's like they've done it before. Lisa's expression revealed nothing. Earth may have been restricted to Seoul, but that doesn't mean we haven't been active beyond our borders. The treaty had loopholes. They stopped at a viewport. Below them, Aldebaran Prime slowly rotated. Earth shuttles ferried supplies to the surface, rebuilding what the Vrax had destroyed. The Alliance always portrayed humans as dangerous, Susan said. Too aggressive, too militaristic to be trusted with advanced technology. And now? Lisa asked. Susan watched an Earth warship move into position above the planet, its weapon systems constantly scanning for threats. Now I understand why they feared you. Fear is a reasonable response, Lisa said without emotion. But there's something the Alliance never understood about humans. What's that? We're dangerous when we need to be dangerous. Lisa turned to face Susan directly. The Alliance chose to be peaceful in a universe that isn't always peaceful. Earth chose to be ready. Susan thought about her grandmother's stories again. Tales of human history filled with conflicts, but also with innovation, born from those conflicts. A species that advanced most quickly when faced with existential threats. The galaxy is about to change, Lisa continued. The Alliance era is ending. What comes next will be shaped by those strong enough to shape it. Susan realized that in saving Aldebaran Prime, Earth had set events in motion that would transform known space. The human soldiers hadn't just come to rescue survivors. They had come to establish a new order with humanity at its center, and for the first time Susan wasn't sure if that was something to fear or to welcome. 3 months had passed since the first Earth ships arrived at Aldebaran Prime. Susan stood on the observation deck of the massive space station orbiting the planet. Through the large viewport, she could see the surface below. New buildings rose from the ruins. Earth construction units worked alongside Aldebaran survivors to rebuild what had been lost. But Susan wasn't looking at her home planet today. Her attention was fixed on the gathering of ships nearby. Vessels from 37 Alliance worlds had assembled for the historic meeting. In the center of the formation floated the UES Valiant, Captain Ross's flagship. Quite a sight, isn't it? Admiral John Carter said, joining her at the viewport. He had arrived 2 days ago to oversee the negotiations personally. I never thought I'd see Alliance diplomats coming to humans for help, Susan admitted. John's expression remained neutral. The galaxy changes quickly when faced with extinction. The door slid open behind them. Peter Wright entered wearing a new uniform. After the liberation of Aldebaran Prime, he had accepted a position as liaison between Alliance survivors and Earth forces. "They're ready for you, Admiral," Peter reported. "The Alliance representatives are aboard the Valiant." John nodded. "Commander Miller, will you join us? Your perspective would be valuable." Susan hadn't expected the invitation. Of course. 20 minutes later, their shuttle docked with the Valiant. Captain Ross met them in the hangar bay. "The diplomats are getting nervous," Alan told John quietly as they walked toward the conference room, "especially the representatives from the core worlds." "They should be nervous," John replied. "The old order is gone, they just haven't accepted it yet." The conference room was the largest space on the Valiant, yet it felt crowded with representatives from so many worlds. Susan recognized some of them from her days at Alliance headquarters. Many looked uncomfortable, surrounded by Earth military personnel. At the head of the table sat a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. Ambassador Nancy Blackwell had been appointed to speak for Earth. Beside her sat General Eric Howard, who had commanded the campaign against the Vrax. Nancy stood as John, Susan, and Alan entered. "Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral John Carter, Captain Alan Ross, and Commander Susan Miller of Aldebaran Prime." The Alliance representatives murmured greetings. Some nodded respectfully. Others stared with barely concealed resentment. "Let us begin," Nancy said once everyone was seated. 3 months ago, Earth forces entered Alliance space in response to a distress call from Aldebaran Prime. Since then, our military has engaged Vrax forces across 17 systems. She activated the display table. A holographic map appeared showing the current state of known space. The red markers that had once indicated Vrax control were gone, replaced by green. "The Vrax threat has been neutralized," General Howard stated. "Their main fleet destroyed. Their command structure dismantled. Their homeworld quarantined with monitoring stations that will alert us to any future aggression." A representative from Centauri, one of the Alliance core worlds, spoke up. "While we appreciate Earth's assistance in this matter, the Treaty of Proxima clearly prohibited military expansion beyond your home system. The Alliance Council never authorized your intervention." John leaned forward. "The treaty also promised Alliance protection to all worlds. That protection failed. 17 worlds fell while your council debated diplomatic approaches to a species that doesn't recognize the concept of diplomacy. The cost of your intervention has been high," another representative argued. "Many Vrax were killed, as were millions of Alliance citizens before we arrived." Susan couldn't help interjecting. "I watched my world burn while Alliance ships retreated to protect the core systems." The room fell silent. Susan's words hung in the air, uncomfortable, but true. "Nancy," Blackwell took control of the conversation again. "We're not here to assign blame for past failures. We're here to discuss the future." She gestured to a document displayed on everyone's datapad. "The Treaty of New Terra, a proposed replacement for the outdated Treaty of Proxima." Susan quickly scanned the document. It outlined a new arrangement between Earth and the Alliance worlds. Earth would provide military protection, with permanent bases established in strategic systems. In exchange, trade and technological exchange would resume between Earth and the rest of known space. "This isn't a treaty," the Centauri representative objected. "It's a military occupation. It's a recognition of reality," John corrected. "The Alliance model of minimal defense and maximum diplomacy failed when tested. Earth's approach succeeded." General Howard brought up images of the Steel Brigade in action. "Our soldiers stopped a threat you couldn't handle. Not because humans are naturally more violent, as your propaganda claimed, but because we never stopped preparing for the worst while hoping for the best." The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued passionately for maintaining Alliance independence. Others, mostly from worlds that had been directly threatened by the Vrax, supported Earth's proposal. Susan watched the discussion with mixed feelings. She had grown up believing in Alliance values, peace, cooperation, cultural exchange. But she had also seen those values crumble when faced with an enemy that didn't share them. As the meeting ended for the day, Susan found herself walking beside Lisa Reeves in the corridor outside. "What do you think will happen?" Susan asked. Lisa looked thoughtful. "The treaty will be signed. Maybe not today, maybe not by every world at once, but eventually. They need us now. And when they don't need you anymore, they'll always need us." Lisa's voice held no arrogance, just certainty. "There are worse things than the Vraks out there. We've seen them." Susan wanted to ask what she meant, but they were interrupted by Captain Ross. "Commander Miller, a word?" Alan guided her to a quiet corner. "Admiral Carter was impressed with your contributions today. He's offering you a position." "What kind of position?" "Liaison officer between Earth forces and former Alliance worlds. You understand both sides. We need people like you to make this transition work." Susan hesitated. "I'm not sure the alliance I believed in still exists." "It doesn't," Alan said bluntly. "But something new is taking its place, something stronger. You can help shape what that becomes." 1 week later, Susan stood on the surface of Aldebaran Prime, watching children play in a newly constructed park. Earth soldiers patrolled nearby, their presence now a normal sight. In orbit, construction continued on a permanent Earth military base. Lisa joined her, out of her combat armor for once. "The first transport of refugees returns tomorrow. People who escaped before the Vraks arrived. They'll hardly recognize the place." Susan nodded. "We're rebuilding, but it's not the same world they left." "Is that a bad thing?" Susan considered the question carefully. "I don't know yet. The Alliance was beautiful in its way. Peaceful, enlightened, and vulnerable," Lisa added. "Yes." Susan couldn't deny it. What Earth brings is different, more pragmatic, more prepared. A formation of Earth fighters passed overhead, their engines echoing across the rebuilt city. A reminder of the new power that had emerged in the galaxy. "My grandmother used to say that humans never forgot how to fight, because the universe never gave them that luxury," Susan said quietly. "I think I understand now what she meant." All around them, the new order was taking shape. Human soldiers protected what Alliance diplomacy had built. Military strength supporting peaceful prosperity. All hope was lost, Susan said, recalling the desperate message she had sent 3 months ago. Until humanity's merciless soldiers arrived. Lisa smiled slightly. "We're not merciless. We're just prepared to do what's necessary." Together they watched the sun set over the reborn world. The first of many that would experience this new era, where humanity's strength would guard the peace that the Alliance had cherished but could not defend.